Reality is not exactly as it seems. Our brains tend to see what we expect to see, and they are always looking to make connections, close gaps, and see patterns as a means of running efficiently and conserving energy. In fact, they're so good at doing this that they can misinform us with things that aren't actually there at all, or quickly eliminate information that might be useful. We can prove this to ourselves with a few simple illusions. Let's start with one known as Troxler's fading. Stare at the black cross in the middle of this clip for just a few moments. After a short time, it may appear to you that the lilac circles surrounding it begin to fade away. Here's an image with the same effect. Once again, stare at the black cross in the middle of the image for just a moment. For most, the background begins to fade away or become one solid color. This neural adaptation effect is known as Troxler's fading, named after the Swiss physician who identified it in 1804. Summed up, any unvarying stimuli can disappear from our awareness. Neural adaptation, or what's known as sensory adaptation, is a gradual decrease over time in how the sensory system responds to a constant stimulus. The sensory neurons that initially responded are no longer stimulated to respond. So when we fixate on a particular point, anything that doesn't change surrounding that point will start to fade away and disappear from our perception. The brain will simply ignore it because the focus is elsewhere. Why is this important to our personal reality? What you focus on may not be what another person is focusing on in the same field of perception. Therefore, what fades away as a constant stimulus, or what the brain begins to ignore from a sensory level, will vary from person to person. Meaning and the physical networks of the brain differ from one individual to the next. For example, take a look at this image that went viral a few years ago. A bride-to-be was sent this photo by her mother. The photo is of a dress that the mother was going to wear to the wedding. When the bride and groom viewed the image, they couldn't agree on whether the dress was blue with black stripes or white with gold stripes. Which do you see? Because it seemed to be such an odd thing to disagree about, they sent the image to people they knew, and just as many people agreed with the bride as the groom, making it an even odder incident that became widespread with numbers of people seeing it one way and numbers of people seeing it the other. So what happened here? It's all about neuroscience. And the answer involves the way in which light enters an individual's eye, the impulse that's delivered to the brain, and the extremely rapid decision that that individual's brain makes about the information that's being received. And it all happens on a subconscious level. So the question is, do our brains give us access to what is truly reality? Do we know what the world really looks like? If there were one true reality, it seems as though we would all see things in the exact same way. But reality varies from person to person. It's subjective based on our personal and internal stored away information and meanings. What we believe on the inside has a direct effect on what we experience on the outside. We know approximately what the world looks like, but our perception of the world is individual to each of us. Let's examine some other ways our perception works. According to Gestalt psychology, there are laws of perceptual organization that explain how what appears to be whole is actually different from the sum of its parts. The brain automatically puts together the pieces of the puzzle to form a distinct perception. I'll go over a few of the laws from this principle here. For instance, in this image, known as the Kanizsa triangle, there is the perception of a triangle that isn't actually there. Gestalt psychologists use this optical illusion to describe the law of closure. According to this law, grouped together objects have a tendency to be seen as part of a whole. The brain will often ignore gaps, as previously mentioned, and image the lines that form the perceived triangle in order to make the image appear as uniformed and whole. From this principle, the law of closure states that things are grouped together if they seem to complete one thing. Once again, the brain fills in the gap, ignoring any information that says otherwise. In this image, it's most likely that your brain fills in the gaps in such a way as to create a meaningful image, and you probably see a circle and a rectangle rather than a bunch of dashes and curved lines. The law of similarity points to the fact that the brain will group things together even when they're not really in a group. In this image, you probably see distinct groups of either black or white circles in rows, rather than just a collection of dots. This type of grouping occurs with both visual and auditory stimuli. Here's another popular illusion that has circled the web. It's called the spinning dancer. Many people claim to be able to see her spinning in both a clockwise and counterclockwise direction. If you're only able to see her moving in one direction and not the other, you may be surprised to learn that it's possible to see her moving in both directions with some practice. To get her to switch directions spontaneously, try watching her for a moment and then blinking. For some, this will change her direction. You can also focus on one specific part of the dancer to cause this change. But here's what it looks like when the lines are present. This video helps you see the dancer spin either way. If you look at the dancer all the way to the right, and then look at the middle dancer, you should be able to see them spinning in the same direction. And if you look at the dancer all the way to the left, and then once again look at the middle dancer, it should be spinning the other way. Numerous websites, videos, and blogs have incorrectly referred to this as a test for left and right brain dominance. However, this illusion is related to what is known as bistable perception. Bistable perception basically means that an object can be perceived as either form A or form B, neither of which is correct or the only option. In other words, it can be seen from two different perspectives, and in this case of the dancing ballerina, because there's no third dimension, the brain tries to construct space around the figure. Thomas C. Topino, chair of the Department of Psychology at Villanova University, stated in a New York Times column, "What's happening here to cause the flip is something happening entirely within the visual system. If we can understand why it is these figures reverse, then we're in a position to understand something pretty fundamental to how the visual system contributes to the conscious experience. And that's ultimately what reality is: subjective conscious experience. Human perception is a fascinating area of cognitive science because it can measure taste and 3D localization of sound, recognize patterns, group things together as a whole, use neural adaptation to quickly eliminate information, and fill in gaps of information. And that's only a fraction of how human perception works. Because our brains take stimulus from our environment, filter through it at lightning speed, and assign meaning almost instantly in a way that makes what is happening appear as simple as possible, it may just be that our outer reality isn't, in fact, outer at all. Much of reality is created internally. Visual information that enters the brain is unclear until it's processed, and the brain almost always relies on usefulness over accuracy. Just the act of seeing itself is a process in which it's essential to make decisions about what to perceive from an unclear stream of information. We rely on this perceptual skill to make instinctive decisions about our life as we move through the world. However, much of this information clearly reveals that just because we sense something visually, we don't necessarily see the reality of it. All perception is your brain's construction of past information. The brain only uses the past to predict what will appear in the present moment, as well as in the next moment. So how do we change it if we don't like the experience? Questioning our own assumptions is what creates change because it prompts the brain to explore the unknown. Target what you assume to be reality, and then ask yourself why you've made that assumption. Your own personal truths are simply highly connected assumptions that have become beliefs. And when you change your assumptions, you have the ability to change the whole perceptual system in your brain. This moves you into a space of possibility. And from possibility, you can create new outcomes. When you change your space of possibility by going outside of the bounds of what you think reality is, you can change your conscious experience, your personal reality, and your future.